Our core mission statement at Microsoft is to empower every person on every organization to achieve more. So it's really around that the trust element is part of GDPR. Whereas if people don't trust our technology, they won't use it. So we're making sure that this new compliance that's come in, all of our products and solutions are actually abiding by that. So we're using our own technologies internally to do that. We have data within the EU that we need to meet this regulation. So we're making sure that we pass this on to our customers as well. So let's just recap what GDPR actually is. So it's nothing new to be, in fact. It's a directive that we have within the UK or the EU at the moment, which is a directive, not a regulation. So we've had this quite a while, and organizations are kind of used to that, but it's not been enforced. So over the last sort of 4 years, there's been a lot of debate around what GDPR should be. We finally agreed that within, I think it was 2006, and organizations have really had 2 years now to make sure that they're going to meet this new regulation. Just a show of hands, who's got a data protection officer at the moment? 2, 3, 4? Interesting, okay. So something to think about within your organization about who's going to be controlling and looking after this new regulation, the data that sits behind it. So this is going to be enforced now on the 25th of May, 2018. So just a feel for the room, do you think that you're going to meet this regulation kind of now, or have you got a lot more work to do? It's something to think about as we go through these slides. So what are the key changes within GDPR? So we've put these down to kind of 4 different pillars. Obviously, GDPR is a massive topic in itself. So there's a 50-page document that you can go away, nice bedtime reading for everyone. But we've really broken down around what that means. So it not just applies to the EU, because we'll still be part of the EU come May 2018. So we need to abide by these rules. But also organizations that are outside of the EU. So Microsoft is a US company, but we do have a subsidiary within the UK that holds EU data. So we need to abide by this. Microsoft believes that this is an important step on data privacy. As you know, this is quite important to us. We've even sued governments around trying to take data out of the EU from American courts. So that's been quite public in our eyes. But it means that there's stronger protections for all organizations, making sure that that personal data is in control and used in the right ways. And GDPR can be very complex. All the different controls, it's not an IT-led compliance, it's an organization-led compliance. So there's technology that can help you with it, and we'll walk through what some of the Microsoft solutions are today, but it's really for your organization to understand what it is from like a policy point of view, a HR point of view. So our commitment to you, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Microsoft is one of the only organizations that have actually written down a compliance or a compliance piece and a commitment to our customers to say, we will help you with GDPR, making sure that our products and services meet that requirement. And it's actually written into the terms and conditions today, and will be refined over time closer to that May deadline, that everyone will have trust in the Microsoft solutions that are able to meet that requirement there. It's about simplifying where your data is. And one example that I give is how many people have got kind of separate systems or multiple systems within your organization. So you might have your email system sat on premises today. It might be Exchange or Lotus Notes. So that has a data repository. But you might also have like a traditional telephone system. That has its own repository as well, and they can be quite complex. If you think of the regulations and the searches and the data within that, how easy is it to report on that data collectively? It's all about kind of streamlining that process, being able to have a single kind of pane of glass to be able to get those reports and that information out of that. I just want to jump into this again, sorry. Although we got the 4 pillars, I see in my eyes this last section, so IT and training, being the most important. So making sure that not only your data protection officers are trained up in GDPR and this compliance, but also staff as well. Are they aware about what this new compliance means to their job roles? They don't have to know everything in GDPR, right? But they need to know what's appropriate to them and how to handle different types of information. Is that information classified, for example? What do I do with that data if I'm going to share with it? How long do I keep that data for? So all of those sort of controls as well. Also, individuals' data, who it is, have the right to erasure. And that's not a band, by the way, or it was a band in the 80s, but they can request for that data to be deleted from them. And that includes everything from your online archives to your backups to your live systems. If you're like me, I've got a background in infrastructure. If you think of how you did backups before and everything goes on a tape, getting that individual bits of data off that tape is going to be horrific. Also, breach notification. So the new rules say that you have to, in the event of a breach, notify the, what's the word? Not the authorities, but your authority within, thank you, within 72 hours. But if the data is actually, what's the word, kind of high risk to that individual's rights, then that owner of that data needs to be informed as well. So there's some very strict notification rules there. And lastly, transparency. So we're all collecting data. Obviously, Microsoft is collecting data as well on organizations and individuals that come to an event like this. But we need to be very transparent about what we're using that data for, what we do internally, so what our processes are. We need to have documented information on what we do, what processes we work to for that information, and then who we're sharing that information with. Let's talk around kind of how we get started. So we've got this, this sort of framework. This is something that Microsoft's actually put together to try and make this new regulation easy to swallow, right? So where do you start? What do you do? And this is how we see, how Microsoft sees you walking through those steps of discover, manage, protect, and report. And what that means within these 4 pillars is obviously discovering kind of what data you have and where it resides, how you manage where that data is actually used, how you protect that data. So have you got a regime that you're able to say where that data is or when it's classified or who you're sharing it with? And lastly is reporting. So any data requests that come in, making sure that you've got a process for that, especially for end users. Report any breaches, and obviously keeping that documentation up to date as well. So what we're going to do is drill into each one of those. So the first one obviously is discover. So discovering what you have in your organization and what's in scope, what's out of scope, and the different types of data that you can have. So we can see kind of in this in scope column, we got things like names, email addresses, like physical addresses, IP addresses, all of those different types of data that you have electronically, you need to discover where this is. And there can be in multiple places, right? It could be held within emails, documents, databases, all of those things that myself and Lyndon have just said. From a Microsoft solution point of view, I don't know if everyone's familiar with the sort of solutions that we have today, but for example, you could use advanced e-discovery within the Office 365 suite. And what that is very powerful machine learning that looks at different types of data and be able to report on that data. And this is a lot more effective than just doing normal searches. So if you do any sort of compliance sort of searches today, any sort of, you need to find out if somebody is doing something wrong within your organization, for example. It can be very hard to understand what the kind of keywords are. This machine learning will look at different types of data and then build up that case for you. And one example of that is there was an organization, and they'll rename anonymous in a moment, but they were using Star Wars names to be able to hide money being extracted from that organization. So it's hidden away, so you'd never think to look for that certain keyword. And I forget now, but they were using a different type of name to be able to say how much money was being squandered from that organization as well. And e-discovery was a good way of finding out and like tagging different bits of information and say, hey, there's lots of talk about, I don't know, Darth Vader, for example. What's all that about? And you can delve into that information. Whereas if they'd gone through the traditional way of doing like a normal search, one, it might not have been discovered, and two, the amount of time and effort and money being able to do that sort of compliance regulations would be vast. So it's a way of speeding up and saving time on that. Before I delve into that slightly, just a couple more points on that. Being able to identify documents as well. Like within this kind of inventory and in scope, using advanced discovery, you'll be able to tag different types of information as well. So you're not having to do that manually, which is a massive overhead. So the second one is how you manage that data. So the data subjects, so the individual's data on whom it is, they have more control of that data, where they don't necessarily do today. They don't have a say. They can request copies of that information. It may be that, for example, they're changing gas suppliers. They can request for that data to be removed or moved from that organization to another one. So they can request that. They can correct any mistakes that's actually in the data. And they can obviously request this information at a moment's notice. I'm struggling with my words now. So you need to be prepared within those timescales to do what they're saying, whether it's deletion or moving that data as well. So the next one is protect. So this is preventing leaks of data, but also detecting leaks. I believe that lots of organizations are really good at this. They have some third-party solutions or Microsoft solutions that are able to kind of flag up within reports and say, hey, something's going on here, you need to go and investigate. But GDPR makes it a lot harder, so it raises the bar. They need to have measures that they're not only kind of detecting when data leak happens, so being proactive instead of reactive, but also preventing that data leak as well. So those solutions need to meet that. And just think about unauthorized access. I know Lyndon's going to go into a little bit later on that will show some scenarios on that and make it real. So think of how people can get access to that data. Because data doesn't reside in a data center as such, no more on premises, on your organization kind of land. It can be in the cloud, it can be on laptops. So just think different types of information, but where they reside as well, because it's not obvious. And lastly is report. So having clear documentation and processes, making sure that you're managing those data requests, making sure that the breach notifications are there as well. So what do you do if something happens? There's new standards in place, as you mentioned, for transparency, accountability, record keeping, and more transparent about, like I said, how you're managing that data. So how are you handling that data? What systems they sit in? Having active document management, refining those policies that you might have today, but also the use of personal data is key, right? It's you're the controller of that data, not the owner of that data anymore. So one example of that is Microsoft has something called the Trust Center. So this is an external facing portal, Microsoft portal that you can go to. And that holds some key information, so documents, reports, up-to-date information on what Microsoft is doing from a cloud perspective, all around compliance, our trusts, which we'll go into some of the certifications in a second, privacy, security, and it's updated on a daily basis. So this actual presentation that I'm showing today gets updated on a daily basis. So last night I actually downloaded the new one, and I'm able to present the latest information that we have on GDPR. So as that happens, then this might change slightly. But it's a good resource to go and look up as well. So this is a snapshot from February this year. So it's got, I haven't counted them by the way, 54 different compliance that our cloud actually meets. So more importantly for the UK, that covers things like PCI, the NHS, IG governance, things like G-Cloud, and ISO 27001 as well. So we're accredited across the board for that in lots of different countries. A last key thing that I want you to kind of take away is, I hope this presentation kind of shows that Microsoft is serious about this compliance. We need to meet it, and by us learning as well, we can obviously help you guys in simplifying this process as well. And there's a couple of key resources. So there's microsoft.com/GDPR, which is being updated on a daily basis. Everything about GDPR and Microsoft that you need to know is on there. And we want to support the efforts of obviously making this easier, because it's a minefield. And using the partners, our partners, and partners that are in the room to help you on that process as well.